All those in favor? Letter C, number 9, Planning Commission report.
New start to a new year, huh?
Yes, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Good evening, everybody. The Planning Commission met last Wednesday, January 15th. One of the first items we discussed was putting into place a chairperson, which Ron was nominated, and we all voted to put him in place again. So we'd like you guys to approve our recommendation for Ron to be the chairperson, and then Pam was nominated to be vice chairperson, and we all approved that one. So we do need you guys to approve our recommendation.
Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There we go.
Good. Quick note, you guys were all at the meeting, so we had a joint meeting, if people don't know, and the main focus was for us to start looking at part of it with the plan, with the comp plan, that we need to align our zoning and ordinances with the new comp plan. So we did some exercises as a group, and I think working together is really a good way to go, and I really appreciate everybody coming last week, and I think all the Planning Commission does. We have a lot to get done by July, and I think it's a big item to decide the land uses, and if we're going to split the commercial areas in different types of commercial areas and renaming and that, and to have your input there at the same time as we're going through it, I think it is very beneficial. And we really did appreciate you being there, and it sounds like next week we're going to hopefully have a workshop again, and we can continue the work that Ben did, putting together the map, and then the exercises that we did with just kind of going through the different areas, and quick 2 minutes coming up with different land uses that we thought was a good way to start. And then hopefully next week we'll have the information kind of compiled, and we'll be able to maybe start narrowing down what works with what. And again, I really appreciate the council all being present there to work through this, because to me, for us to do it and then come back 2 weeks later or the next week and bring it to you and then come back, we're just going back and forth, and the time it takes to me, is not efficient. So I think it was a good way to do it. So that was about it.
All right. So we'd like to talk about, and someone could move, we'd like to have another joint meeting with the Planning Commission on February 5th, 2020. So it's not this next week, because that's the 5th week, but it'll be the next week after that. So it would be the same process about everybody who can be there, be there. You guys can all be there.
I'll be gone.
So-
I'll be gone.
Denny, we'll be thinking about you.
You don't want to Skype in?
No.
So who would like to make that motion?
I'll do it. I move to approve a call for a special joint meeting with the Planning Commission on February 5th, 2020, for a continued discussion of zoning districts and uses within the Freeway District.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There we go. We'll see you, all of us, except Denny. Number 10, a public open forum. Anyone like to add anything to the conversation? If not, we'll move on to number 11. So those of you in the audience will notice our new city engineer, Kevin, is here from Bolton and Mink. He was at the earlier meeting, and we can discuss his contract right now, and then we'll have a motion to agree to it or not. So,
Mr. Mayor and Council, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I was just going to read through the discussion you had at the early meeting, just a couple of quick changes.
Yep.
And I didn't mean to interrupt your introduction of the city engineer, sorry about that. The two changes, one on page 3, just clarifying that there is no charge for attendance at city council meetings. I believe that was the understanding. So we'll just add that to paragraph B1. And then on Exhibit 1, at the end of the contract, we're going to add another item at the end of general engineering services to provide consulting services to the city in connection with its role as local governmental unit for the Sunrise Water Management Organization.
Thank you.
So those were the two changes you discussed.
So would someone like to make the motion, please?
I move to approve the agreement for professional services consulting city engineering services with Bolton and Mink.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? We had a pretty good discussion at our earlier meeting. If not, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Welcome to Columbus.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We're very excited to be here, and we'll look forward to a long and successful relationship. Thank you.
Starting tomorrow, right?
Pardon me?
Starting tomorrow morning.
Yeah, correct.
We're going to date it today, since he's in the chair.
That's right.
Now we'll move on to the TKDA transition on page 15.
Yeah, the city has been talking with TKDA over the past 2 or 3 weeks. They did send a letter to the city in transition, and while I've had not a chance to review it, nor review it with our city attorney, on page 15, there is a 2020 schedule of hourly billing rates from TKDA. And at this point, there are several projects that TKDA is going to be working on. And through that transition process, we will have existing projects that TKDA will work on. Then there'll be projects that Bolton and Mink will start. And so for, I would say, 3 to 6 months, there'll be a transition where we'll have both TKDA and Bolton and Mink working with the city. And so TKDA has requested that we adopt the 2020 schedule for billing rates for the existing projects that they're already working on. And then we'll work through a transition letter agreement for the next city council meeting.
Would someone like to make that motion, please?
I'll make a motion, move to approve the 2020 fee schedule for professional services consulting, city and engineering services with TKDA as presented on page 15.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? I have a question, Elizabeth. So they are finishing, TKDA will be finishing, like the Northeast Quad,
Yes,
putting in the stoplights, wrapping up their other, everything they have started the last year or two.
correct.
And then Bolton and Mink will move forward, like on South Hornsby Street, Furman Street, that kind of stuff.
With all new projects or projects that are easily transitioned. And that's what the letter will outline. It'll outline all of that so that everybody's on the same page as to what is the next steps.
Yeah? Any questions from anyone?
Well, I'm assuming that Kevin or one of his designees will also be present and involved so that they know even what TKDA is finishing up with, so they're up to speed on those projects as well? And that would be part of the transition? Is that correct?
I think,
Or is that not correct?
Mr. Mayor, council member, what we discussed and kind of envisioned is that there are certain projects that are almost done, and so TKDA will just finish those, probably provide a report to the city and the consultant engineer. Then there are those projects that can be handed off and transitioned, and so there would be a fair amount of discussion on those, and then new projects would start with Bolton and Mink.
Okay.
I think that's how we
Yes.
envision it. Now, we haven't seen what the transition letter, I mean, they may have a different idea about which projects are close to being done and otherwise.
Okay.
So we've had a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. We did-
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sure we're starting with that.
Now we're on number 12, Priner's Preserve Letter of Credit Reduction Request, number 5, pages 16. Elizabeth, you'll have to walk us through that.
We have a development called Priner's Reserve, and it's a development that has detached townhomes, and in that development, there were streets that were dedicated to the city the year ago in December. The previous council accepted those roads, and when there are roads that a developer provides through a development agreement, there's a warranty period, and it's 1 year. And that 1 year was up this past December. TKDA went out and they felt that they really couldn't do a good inspection of the roads. And so on page 18, there's a letter from Dennis Posler indicating that his recommendation is that we reduce the letter of credit, and in this case, we have cash, and we reduce it to $107,500. And so in the bills, you'll see that there is a check in the amount of $107,500 for that, so that we can do the final inspection come spring.
So it's on page 16?
I'm sorry, it's on page 16. You have page 17 and 18 outline previous letters of a reduction. This is probably an unusual situation where we actually have cash. Normally, we would have just a letter of credit from the bank, so it's very rare that we would have this much cash, or holding this much cash.
A motion to move to approve the letter of credit reduction in the amount of 10% of the original Surly amount, $107,500 for Priner Preserve until a final inspection can be performed in the spring.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Number 13, we need a motion and approval of the 2020 citywide recycle events. That's on page 19.
I have a question. Can I ask a question on this? Or do you want to give a summary first, or?
You know, there's a memo in your agenda packets from Lori indicating, as she's the recycling coordinator, indicating that she has proposed 3 events, and she's asking for input from the council as to see if there's any changes, deletes, additions that you want to see happen through the recycling program.
So I love all these events, but I think in the last week I got a postcard from Lino Lakes, but this was through Anoka County, and one of the things that they were offering was a Fix-It clinic, which was kind of unique, and I meant to bring you, or bring her that. Did anybody else get that? So it was a card that basically they're setting aside a date and a place that residents in Anoka County, I think specifically Lino, can bring small electronics and other stuff that's broken, and they'll have technicians there that can look at it and either fix it or tell them whether it's going to be worth fixing, so to sort of prevent people from tossing things that's fixable. I have no idea how that's funded. It's through Anoka County, so I'm assuming that they had some role in it, but it kind of intrigued me, and I wondered whether or not that was anything we might be interested in doing.
If you want Lori to explore it, we can certainly do that if you think that's something you want to add to the events.
Well, I'd like to hear if anybody else is interested in that. I mean, I thought it was a good idea,
A good idea if we get it.
especially if Anoka County helps,
Yeah.
fund it.
For what it's worth, I do know they hold those Fix-It clinics throughout Anoka County. So different city halls will hold it there, or community centers will hold it. We've had some information about it on our website. So it's something that they've been doing for some time, so it might be easy to get involved.
Yeah. Well, and then I can bring the card in if she wants to ask about it, but that would be the only thing I would add. I wouldn't change anything she's got on here.
Well, then, would you like to make a motion to approve the 2020 citywide recycling events?
So I'll move to approve the 2020 citywide recycling events as presented, with the addition of Lori looking into adding a Fix-It clinic as sponsored by Anoka County.
Second?
Any more discussion? If not, call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Letter D, engineer report. Anything, Mr. Engineer?
I have nothing to add at this point, but Elizabeth was going to talk about an issue that I will add to, so.
In your agenda packet on pages 20 and 21, last week we had someone come up in open forum and talk about the intersection of Kettle River Boulevard and Camp 3, and just that entire section. And I happened to be reading an article in one of the reading materials that I get, and it talked about intersections and how, what optimal sight distances were for different things, and how sometimes when people are driving, their perception of how fast drivers are driving is misinterpreted. So I asked Ben to look at it, read the article, see what the studies or what they came out with, and to look at that intersection to see, in fact, if we had cleared to that distance, which was 1,000 feet. And he did, and he said, yeah, they did. They cleared, you know what I mean, up to 1,000 feet. So it wasn't like it was only 400 feet and there was, and that we could say, well, look, they just did a study and it should be more like 1,000. So I put the article in here thinking that, well, what would be the next steps and what could we do? And, you know, was there any graduate students that were looking at, you know what I mean, projects and such? And didn't really know where the council wanted as far as next steps. And then earlier, I was talking with Kevin, and he said, well, maybe we should have a workshop, and maybe I'll have a traffic engineer look at it, we'll have Anoka County come in, and we can talk about options and next steps.
Yeah, we could have one of our traffic people take a look at the intersection, evaluate the crash data that's available through MnDOT, and come up with some recommended next steps. And you know, if we need to have a meeting with Anoka County, we'd certainly have one of our experts in that area participate, so.
Didn't we have a crash data presented at one point, and
Anoka County evaluated the crash data, and that's how they came up with the site, you know, reevaluating the site distances and doing all the clearing, reestablishing where the stop signs were, and that was their fix to the crash data. And we still now have people come before us, as last week. I remember there was one gentleman that had, I think it was his parents who had an accident that actually came before us, and now Mark, but I think there was someone in between there too that came before us.
And I know I'd gotten an email from, I think, Matt Karnst about this exact same intersection. And I don't remember if he was, I think he was involved in an accident there, and he was very concerned. And I think, you know, it's the angle that it intersects Kettle River that's the problem. Your blind spot is right where that oncoming traffic is, so you don't see the traffic. I mean, they're kind of like right at that distance, so if you pull out, you won't see them, and they're close enough that they're gonna hit you. So unless you're kind of like moving your head around, or you're kind of inching up, or you're really being cautious, because you know it's a bad intersection, it would be very easy to look and pull out and get creamed.
So I guess there's a couple of different ways that we can look at this. You know, we went to Anoka County. Anoka County gave us two scenarios of what they thought. One was close the road, and I forget what the other one, I think it was a rather elaborate way of doing it, or looking at that intersection. But I think at this point, either we have a new set of eyes, look at it, see what the options are, bring Anoka County in, because it would have to be a joint project as far as funding, to see what other funding mechanisms we could have participate, depending on if there is a good solution. Or we can, I mean, there's like a do nothing, do something, and I'm not sure what the third bucket would be, but really it's more about direction as to what council wants to do for next step, other than just talking with Anoka County, because I think Anoka County will only reiterate that memo from the traffic engineer, which was from before.
okay, but if we had taken steps to close that off, okay, then you're talking about Kettle River Boulevard and 97 coming together. And at that point, it's two county roads. And at that point, then they're going to be responsible for even a worse scenario with the sight lines. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because it's one I always forget the name of it, 154th or whatever it is coming in there, and then you got Kettle River. So that's the problem. They come up with this idea because of that one intersection, but if we did something about that, it would become their problem down at the, down at the, where it actually comes in at a more acute angle. So I don't understand why we can't have the discussion with them. And are you saying that maybe Kevin with a new vision or whatever will have some sway over Anoka County?
No, I think if we had some options, some real life, you know what I mean, options, if a traffic engineer looked at it and say, here are the 5 options or 2 options, I don't even know how many options there would be, then you have Anoka County sit at the table and say, well, this will work, this wasn't, and then look to see if there's funding mechanisms to do it. And it's really, at this point, in other words, do you really want to, if they came up with a solution, are you going to be willing to have a project and pay for it? Or are we just looking for solutions on paper?
We wouldn't be paying for it if it was Kettle River Boulevard and Lake Drive.
We've paid for every project that has been 2 county roads. That's the way that their programs work.
So they would force us to pay a portion of where the 2 counties come
It's
from.
usually a pretty modest portion, but
yeah.
there's always some piece that.
Because I can understand where we would have to have a substantial part of the one where we own the piece of road, but.
I think until we knew what the solution was, or we knew, you know what I mean, where Anoka County had it in their CIP, if they even have anything in their CIP, which is their capital improvement plan, it would be hard to say. But I know that Anoka County generally don't design interchanges unless it's in their CIP. And yes, we could bring it up and we can take the long route and we can wait for their open enrollment or their open period where they take comments and then they put it in their CIP, or we can be proactive, look at the interchange, spend a little money figuring out what kind of solutions we can have Anoka come in at a workshop so we can talk about whether those options are viable to put in their CIP plan. And all of this, I mean, we can just take it under advisement and put it on the shelf if you wanted.
I think there's been enough concern raised with that intersection that if you have traffic engineers that could take a look at it with a fresh set of eyes, that may not be a bad thing to do, and I think it would be, not an expensive thing to do. But I agree with Shelley that they should probably also look at the Kettle River Lake Drive 155th intersection also, because a closure of Camp 3 would shift more traffic there, and that one is also dangerous. And so ideally, you could look at both things with an eye toward.
We would look at the whole,
Yeah.
that whole area in terms of the traffic issues. And again, this would be a very kind of a broad overview I see at this point, just to come up with some ideas on what the next steps forward could possibly be. I mean, there are some funding sources out there, Highway Safety Improvement Program, but those you have to prove certain safety issues to get that kind of funding, and there's other local road improvement programs and that kind of thing that we could see if this could be a possible candidate for that type of funding as well. And it wouldn't take much just to look at it in a real preliminary way, so.
Well, and I think when we brought this up before, we'd included that intersection with Camp Lake Drive and Kettle River, and I don't know that one actually got communicated to Anoka County as being a concern as well. I think they only looked at the Camp 3 and Kettle River, so I don't know that other one had been brought to their attention.
Yeah, I don't know that we specifically said, that there was, and I don't know, I'm not aware of very many accidents at that intersection. I mean, I know it's that unusual angle, for turning movements.
And there's also sort of a rise, right? People heading towards Lake Drive on Kettle River, there's a rise. So when people are turning, right onto Kettle River, you aren't going to see the car coming over the rise if you're going to go straight onto 155th. And I think that's where it's really dangerous. I mean, if you know about it, you can come over that rise, you're kind of cautiously looking for turning vehicles and stuff. But if you're not familiar with the area, fortunately, I don't think there's a lot of traffic that goes on 155th, but it's really a bad design. there's no traffic control about like who has the right of way, who gets to go. I mean, you don't know until you're on each other's bumper or doors.
So do we need a motion of direction? Would like to make it.
So I would move to direct the city engineer to have their traffic engineers take a look at those two intersections and then participate in a council workshop to discuss possible options with or without Anoka County, depending on what you find.
Correct. Is there a second? Any more discussion?
How many options did Anoka County show us? Was that less than a year ago, wasn't it? That they came out with all these options
I
and
think there's only two.
two? And were they gonna go forward with anything or just said what we can do?
I just think they came up with two, you know what I mean, they gave us back to, just two options.
But one of them was closing the road, right?
And one of them was, yes, one of them was closing the road.
Which just creates the problem downstream.
So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. The next is number 16. Oh, I'm sorry, 15. Attorney's report.
It's all right, I don't have a report.
Number 16, mayor and city council members report. Denny?
Nothing to report.
Janet?
So I have two things. One was I was invited to a meeting last week at Rice Creek Watershed that they presented to the two candidates that are running for the Anoka County Commissioner seats. This was an informational meeting to sort of get them up to speed with the work that Rice Creek does. And I was invited because I'm the city liaison to Rice Creek. So that was actually really helpful to me to hear about their projects and some of their accomplishments and their funding mechanisms and things. But one of the things that kind of it reminded me of is that the city had put forth a nomination for the county to reappoint Pat Priner as the chair of the Rice Creek Watershed. And my understanding is that the county has deferred on that action until the election in February and the new commissioner for this area is named. So I think it might make sense for us to just resend the letter or send an updated letter saying we still stand by our prior recommendation, just to make sure that there's something current when those new folks get seated, or that new person gets seated, I should say.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Then I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
And then the second thing I have is, since, I think, May of last year, we have been working with the senior club and the Anoka County and various other folks to sort of get some clarity on the senior center next door. And we, I think, reported at prior council meetings that we had gotten some clarity from the county and HUD on the funding that had been prior approved or granted to the city to build it, and got all that straightened out. So we know now that we can use that building as a community center, and it doesn't have to be specifically for senior services, et cetera. So we met today with the officers of the senior club to start talking about that transition. There was a number of things that we decided. One was that we are going to rename that building the Columbus Community and Senior Center. We talked about just sort of a transition in terms of some of the expenses that they had incurred as being the sole occupants essentially of that building, to us taking it on as a department of the city and opening it up to the public. Likely, we will not, it probably won't be open to the public till probably sometime in March or so, after we get the fee schedule established and a policy written and application forms drafted and things like that. So there's some time between now and then for the seniors to kind of, take inventory of the property that they have there, and for us to draft those policies and documents and things like that. So all is moving well, and I think everybody's really happy with the outcome. In the meeting that we had, there were a couple of requests that the senior club had made of the council. One was that there's a fair amount of tables and chairs over there that they own. And so they're going to be looking at what their options are, but more than likely, they, with the approval of their membership, they will likely want to donate those to the city to use in the new, donate them or give them or sell them or whatever the proper legal mechanism is for us, so we don't have to go out and buy new ones. And we talked about what the new fee schedule would be, and that for the first year or so that we likely, that we would allow them to continue to meet on a weekly basis, as they have been. And like any civic organization, we probably would not be charging any civic organization for a few hours of use during the middle of the week. However, we did have some discussion about them renting that whole space for a day or a day and a half during Fall Fest. And so they had made a request that for a 5-year period, we waive any fee that we would charge the senior center or the senior club for use of that facility during Fall Fest. So I brought that forward for discussion during our workshop. And again, we don't have a agreed upon fee schedule, so I'm not going to talk about dollars, but we likely, if the club decides that they want to move that property, those tables and chairs from their ownership to our ownership, likely the value of those would probably be somewhere equal to what we would end up charging them. And we would, if that's the case, then we would have the attorney draft a agreement that would codify that sort of transaction. And I think everybody here was in favor of that. So we will wait for them to make their final decision about that property. And if that's how they want to move forward, then we'll have Bill draft that agreement. And then with council approval. And then the second request they made was that they had been paying rent for that, for the use of that building up through the end of December. Well, they were being charged rent up through the end of December. They had a 2-month rent check that they, in the amount of $600 that they asked if we would forgive to help them resolve sort of a cash flow issue. And we discussed that during our workshop as well and said that the majority did not want to forgive that, but that we'd be willing to extend the due date to the end of April to help them with their cash flow issue. So with approval of the council, I can report that back to them too. So having said all that, I'd be happy to make a motion summarizing what I just said, unless anybody has questions. So I move to finalize the agreement between the city and the Senior Center Board, as discussed earlier in our workshop, to include the transfer of electric and gas bills to the city as of December 23rd, 2019, to change the name to the Columbus Community and Senior Center, to accept the chairs and tables with a donation agreement to offset rental of the building for Fall Fest over the next 5 years, and their request for the November and December rent, for us to forgive the November and December rent that is due, was declined, but we would be willing to extend the due date to the end of April 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now we're on to number 17, Public Works Report, but there's no one here from Public Works. So we'll move to number 18, Public Information Coordinator Report.
No report.
Number 19, City Administrator's Report.
Well, we didn't finish with the rest of the council.
We're feeling a little,
Reports.
little sad down here.
Not the first time, but I got nothing to
No,
report.
no.
I'm sorry.
Because I
We are
talked
just
too
your
long
eye
and we
people
lost
down
our thread.
Moving right
We
along.
lost our thread, sorry.
Just wanted to mention that we have the networking event for the Columbus businesses to get information on branding. It's going to be at the track tomorrow at 4 to 6, and we're hoping to get some information from the businesses on what they think branding of Columbus should entail.
Anything else? All right. So everybody's going to be there, right?
I don't know.
Yes, except for Denny.
I'll be there.
They'll be in Arizona or something.
Away there, though.
All right. So we'll see everybody there tomorrow night. Now, Elizabeth, you're up. City Administrator's Report.
I only have one announcement. I just received notification from Anoka County that they have set our local Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting for April 21st at 7 PM. So April 21st at 7 PM.
That's a Monday night?
Tuesday.
I think it's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, sorry.
And that's all I have.
All right. So the next thing we have is a closed meeting discussion on the North of Zurich Street land acquisition. And so do I close this meeting?
He has to read that.
Yes, I would suggest you just read any announcement. So,
Okay,
under
oh,
E.
sure. So we'll move down to letter E. Announcements and reminders, the city council workshop was today. The planning commission meeting is February 5th, 2020 at 7 PM. The calendar of meetings are as noted. Then we can adjourn this meeting?
You're actually closing this meeting, so it's the same meeting,
Yeah.
but you're actually going into a closed session.
I'll close the
Engineer can
public-
stay, because we're talking about road projects.
I'll close the public portion of this meeting. Do I have to read what we are,
Yes,
Here-
okay.
please do.
This will be the closed meeting under Minnesota statute sections 13D.05 subdivision 3C to consider offers or counteroffers for the purchase of the property for the purpose of extending Zurich Street to the north of Lake Drive. And now I'll close this meeting.
Yep.
All right.